So now you may remember the big protests against fracking in Balkan last summer. Well, Ruth has called from Hampshire. Good morning, Ruth.
Good morning.
You were part of those protests in Balkan, were you?
Yes, I joined in, yes.
Why?
For me, fracking is not so much about the local pollution and safety. Of course, that's very important, but it's about climate change for me. I first learned about climate change 30 years ago at the university, and we've known about it for so long. We know what's happening. And I think this country, and maybe particularly Wales, because in a way you could say the Industrial Revolution started in Wales, we have a moral and historical responsibility to try. Now we know what fossil fuels do to the environment. We have a responsibility to lead the world away from the climate change cliff, if you like, and towards a safe, clean, renewable future. And fracking is simply digging up more fossil fuels when we already have the scientists look like it tell us it's something like 5 times the amount of known reserves of fossil fuels in the ground that we know about. We need 5 times more than we need to completely wreck the planet for our children and all the other species on it. And so it's just suicidal madness to frack for more.
Do you mind if I introduce John Roberts here, who is an energy security specialist? Is that okay, Ruth?
Yeah, sure.
Keep you on the line. John works for Methinks Limited. Hello, John. Good morning.
Good morning.
What are the facts of this, then, in terms of fracking, its damage to the environment, and I suppose the likelihood, the realistic likelihood of us moving away from fossil fuels in the near to medium future? Could it be done?
In the long run, clearly we need to move away from fossil fuels. Problem: how much does that cost, and what's the damage in the short and the medium term? In other words, it's always a balance, and everybody wants to have one simple, single solution, and the problem is that there isn't a simple, single solution. In my view, fracking constitutes at least an avenue that should be explored, because I'm actually worried about the energy security supplies for Europe as a whole, and this country in particular. But I do absolutely accept the argument that we have a problem with climate change, with man-made climate change, and that we need to address that. And that means that we need to address the carbon content that we get from fossil fuels, because we have a problem in that it's going to take a number of years to wean us successfully off fossil fuels, because at the moment we don't have a clear alternative to oil for automotive transport, and the best alternative we have to that is gas, and the problems we have with gas are political security concerning a large part of Europe's gas supply, and therefore that makes sense to see if we can develop our own gas supplies.
Ruth, what's your short-term solution to that problem?
I agree with a lot of what you say, John. It is going to be extremely hard. But if you look at the science, if you look at what's going on in the atmosphere, it is not going to wait for us to wean ourselves off fossil fuels. If weaning ourselves off fossil fuels involves digging for more that we don't even know about yet. It just doesn't make sense. And the fact that I know gas is better than coal, I totally agree with that. But we are already running down our coal-fired power stations. It is our job in this country that led the world into the Industrial Revolution to lead the world into a clean, renewable revolution that we need now. We cannot wait to go via gas. We cannot wait to go via gas. We have to go from where we are now, we have to go to renewables. If you look at the science, it just won't wait for us to frack. And once we start, if we do go down the fracking route, I know they want to build a whole load, George Osborne they want to build more for gas power stations that have a lifetime of 30 years. So if you build a gas-fired power station today, you will, in a way, have to keep it going for 30 years. You will have to keep on digging up more gas. It just doesn't make sense if you look at the science and how urgently we have to move off fossil fuels. We cannot go via gas. We have to go immediately into renewables.
Why can't we do that, John? And people have been saying to us this morning, well, look, anaerobic digesters can create a lot of energy. Tidal power could be the thing. What about hydroelectric schemes? Why can't we just get on with that, John? Couldn't that be the answer?
I would love to see things like the Pentland's first tidal water flow scheme. I would love to see all the forms of natural renewable energy being developed. But there's a problem. Much of the technology is still at an early stage. The ability to adapt that technology to very large-scale operations at tremendous financial cost is a problem. One of the advantages of fracking is A, that it can be done by commercial companies, and I regret bitterly that we have a situation in which the state is no longer in a position to conduct energy development itself. I think this is a problem. But given that we have to rely on the private sector, I think fracking makes good sense. I'm not saying it is the total answer, because there is no total answer.
Thank you very much.
But I do think that we need probably to have gas as a transition fuel, by which I mean gas produces less CO2 than either coal, a lot less than coal, and quite a lot less than oil.
Okay, I need to move on, John.
And I would make the point that logically we need to be phasing in more gas as we phase out more oil and coal. Because the one thing that we do need to do is to reduce our overall CO2 production.
Okay, thank you very much, John. I need to move on. Thank you for your contribution there. That's John Roberts. Thank you to Ruth as well, calling us from Hampshire. I've got Brian in Merthyr. I've got Alan in Aberbargoed. I'll come back to Keith Ross as well before 10 o'clock. But Brian, first of all, what do you think of fracking? You for it?
Oh, dead against it, Ollie. I'm a member of Friends of the Earth and Greenpeace. All this nonsense is coming from the pro camp for fracking is terrible. Now, let's go back a bit and let's remind ourselves what David Cameron once said. He says, I want to emancipate people, he said, all the people in Britain to become self-sufficient in producing and generating and consuming their own electricity. What he meant by that is that every house would have solar panels on their roofs, and the use of other renewable energy sources such as tidal lagoons and barrages. There's such a thing as combined heat and power, and there's also these food digesters which produce energy. Now, there was a report on BBC Wales some years ago where a village, I believe it is, in somewhere in Wales, I can't remember where it is precisely, has got the use of this, and it provides those people in that village with cheap energy to light their houses and hot water. Now, if that was to be reproduced throughout all of Wales, that would contribute towards people's energy needs. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to be miraculous and it's going to, make us self-sufficient, but it's going to contribute to us cutting down on the need of this form of energy which people are in favour of, fracking and open-cast coal mining and oil and nuclear power.
Alan, are you in favour of all of this?
Well, the gentleman said something about what I'm in favour of tidal power. There's a country that's in Europe somewhere. All of the country is run on what do they call it?
Renewables. And so Tosh is saying that Iceland is 100% running on renewables on the text this morning.
Hydropower, right?
Right.
And they sell electricity. And there's enough running water around this country, rivers and tidal things, to do it in this country.
Precisely.
There is. And what that gentleman was on about there now, about that program on the telly, I've seen it and all. But it wasn't wasn't a village, he was a farmer. He had got a stream running through his farm.
Well, there was a microgeneration scheme in the Brecon Beacons that I remember. Is that the one we're talking about?
Yeah, you got it, yeah. And he powers all his farm with a 4-inch pipe goes into a little garden shed with a generator in it, a little small thing in it. It's lovely, it's beautiful.
Yeah, but come on, we're not going to be able to do that for every house in Merthyr and Aberbargoed, do we?
No, but you've got enough, as I said, enough running water around this country to work on hydropower.
Ollie, can I
go on, Brian.
Now, what's been happening across Europe is, and I've said this before across the airwaves, is decentralised energy, where countries such as the Netherlands and Germany and places like that, and Britain is lagging far behind the rest of Europe and the world on this.
Miles behind there.
Now, decentralised energy is where the energy production, generation and consumption is shrunk down to the individual, where the individual in the house and in the workplace is responsible for that. Now, with the means of solar panels, take that for instance, now, that is far more advanced than what it used to be. On most occasions, people are actually giving their energy into the national grid and being paid for it. Now, it's not going to solve the problem, but it's going to cut down on our consumption of oil and gas and nuclear energy.
Time is up, I'm afraid. Thank you, though. Thanks to Brian. Thank you, Brian and Merthyr. Thank you to Alan Aberbargoed. Keith Ross as well. Thanks to you. You've had a long morning with us this morning, Keith. But I bet you walk away from this encouraged, don't you?
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't need to be here. All the other people who've called in and made all the points that I would have made if you'd just let me speak for an hour.
Well, I'm glad you've been here anyway. And thank you very much, Keith. This from Cindy, finally, this text message. Most of the sensationalist objections to fracking are being made by people who don't have any idea of the realities of the processes involved. All industry leads to extra road transport and disruption, but fracking takes place so far underground it has less disruption than many other processes. Let's talk to fracking companies and find out the facts before spouting sensationalist rumours and scaring people. Cindy, thank you. Here's Ben As with the weather forecast.
Thanks very much.